It is absolutely beautiful. And it just makes you think this is what all roads of the Roman Empire looked like. But they are not all straight, they are not all beautifully paved, they are not all named. And so that's why I wanted to meet you here.
I'm Wendy Holloway, and this is Flavor of Italy, sharing the very best of Italian food and wine, lifestyle, and culture. This is Wendy Holloway with the Flavor of Italy podcast, and I'm sitting here with Tom Brughmans, and pronounce your name the right way.
Tom Brughmans.
Okay, yeah, a little bit different. And we're here to talk about the Roman road system. And we're not just talking about Rome, city of Rome. We're talking about the truly ancient Roman road system throughout Europe. And Tom is doing some amazing things, and I'll include a link to a New York Times article, which is where I found out about Tom initially. And I'm going to pass the microphone to Tom and basically let him tell you everything there is to know, exactly what he's doing, because it's fascinating. Okay, it's your turn here.
Thank you, Wendy. So, and thanks for this invitation. So what we've done is we've created the first spatially detailed map of all the roads of the Roman Empire. And you might think, well, that's maybe the one thing that we do know about the Roman Empire. They built lots of roads. They were everywhere. They were very straight. They famously all led to Rome. But in fact, until now, until our atlas, you couldn't Google those roads. You couldn't really find out where they all are and what our degree of knowledge is about them. So we created this first very detailed atlas. You can actually access it yourself by going to itinerary-e.org. So that's itinerary.org. And it's essentially the Google Maps of the ancient world. And the reason I wanted to talk to you, Wendy, right here in Rome by the Terme of Caracalla is that we are very near the most iconic Roman road, the Via Appia, the Appian Way. This one, I think, actually can be blamed for quite a lot of those misunderstandings about ancient Roman roads, because it's famously straight.
Italians get blamed for everything.
Yeah, but this road in particular,
Yeah.
It is very straight. When you walk it, you can see along to the horizon. You're just like a straight, very paved road with these very famous kind of pointy cypress trees and beautiful Roman ruins all alongside it. And because that's the most famous Roman road, people think like, well, all the roads of the Roman Empire looked like that. They were all straight. They all had a beautiful name like the Via Appia. They were all with pointy cypress trees along it. And that is just not true. We are not just near the Via Appia. We are at the crossroads of three important roads leading to the south of Italy from Rome. So the Via Appia, the Via Latina, and the Via Adriatina. And the latter two are actually older than the Via Appia, and they don't look at all like the Via Appia. They are not straight. They are very wiggly.
In fact, that's right, yeah.
And, because you have to take into account that the landscape doesn't allow you to build straight roads all the time. So the Via Latina, for example, goes south into a very volcanic area where, you have to kind of go around the volcano crater. You can't just build straight over it. That doesn't make any sense. And so, that's why I wanted to meet you here, Wendy. We're on this important crossroads of three important roads. One of the most iconic one that is to blame for all of those misunderstandings about what Roman roads really are. And
so misunderstanding in the sense that it's a real road. You recognize it as a road. So, and it kind of sets the groundwork for making you think that they're all the same. That's why it's to blame.
Exactly.
Because it's a great one.
It is absolutely beautiful. And it just makes you think this is what all roads of the Roman Empire looked like. But they are not all straight. They are not all beautifully paved. They are not all named. And so that's why I wanted to meet you here. Um, what we've done is created this first very spatially detailed map. And so that allows us to answer those kind of questions. Were Roman roads very straight? Did they all lead to Rome? Or where else did they lead? Which places, which ancient cities were very central to movement over land in the Roman Empire? And how did this system change over time? And what parts of it do we not know so well? So we need to have quantitative data in order to answer questions like that. That wasn't possible until now. Now we can do those things.
And explain why it's possible now, what you're actually doing that makes it possible, and a little bit about your group and how your group of 20 people, how you connected and started this amazing thing that got you in a wonderful article in the New York Times.
Yeah, well, as a researcher, you never think that what you're doing is of particular wide public interest. It really took people like the journalists at the New York Times to tell us, no, I think people will care about this one. We've been working with a team of 20 people from lots of universities internationally for a period of 5 years to try to collect all evidence that we could find about where those Roman roads are. We were focusing in particular on publications, literature describing the course of these Roman roads, but also ancient sources. We've got fantastic sources like the Antonine itineraries. These are ancient travel accounts, essentially telling you if you want to get from Cadiz in the south of Spain to the Pyrenees, then you first go from this town to that town over this road. Now you go to the next town over that road. It just tells you what to do. But so that tells us, okay, there must have been an ancient road here. And then we try to find those ancient roads based on research, but also on satellite photography, both what the present day kind of landscape looks like, but also historical satellite photography, because in the last 100 years, there's been huge amounts of population growth and increasing development, and those things destroy archaeological traces. So by looking at satellite photography from the late 60s and 70s and the 80s, we can kind of strip back some of that development and see if there's any traces of Roman roads left in the landscape that are now completely lost forever. And then we also use lots of topographic information like historical maps and current day maps just to see where would this road be with respect to the landscape. Like I said earlier, if there's a volcano in the way, the road's not going to go straight over the volcano. It's going to respect the landscape and take the path of least resistance.
Yeah. So what exactly is there now in our present life that has facilitated this process and made it so much easier?
Well,
let me ask this even more directly. Is AI involved in this or not?
AI is not involved in this process.
For once. For once.
Exactly. But it could have been, and it should be in the future. AI is really great at taking lots of data and identifying patterns that, the human eye can also detect, but not at that scale and not as fast, right? Now, for the first time, we have a data set that researchers can download to see, this is our best knowledge of where we think the Roman roads are. And so AI can be used to train on that data and to detect potential locations of Roman roads that we don't know, or to increase our knowledge of where they might be, to reduce the uncertainty in the data set. So that will be future research. But I think a lot of future research will be dependent on AI.
Yeah. So you're from Belgium, and I just met one of your colleagues from another European country. I forget where.
Yeah, from Poland, Krakow. Yeah.
Okay, so he's from Poland, and so you must have colleagues here in Italy and throughout. So where exactly, for our listeners who might not be familiar with the Roman road system, where all does it extend?
Yeah. Well, because
it's not just Rome at all.
The Roman Empire had the size of about half the present-day United States, and it covers more than 30 modern countries on 3 continents, much of Western and Southern Europe, as well as the Middle East and North Africa. So it goes in Africa, from Morocco to Egypt, in the Middle East, from Israel to Syria and Turkey, and in Europe all the way to Britain and Spain.
So is your research including colleagues from those countries as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like,
Oh,
our
wow.
20,
Yeah.
the 20 people who directly collaborated are from a ton of different countries within that region. But we also collaborated with a couple of external projects who have done a lot of work on, digitizing or finding the road system in their particular region. And so, obviously, we could collaborate and add that data to our database. But the most important contribution, I feel, is not that now we've got an idea of where the Roman roads are, but that we've also got an online platform that can grow, that can keep on representing to the best of our ability where those Roman roads are, that people can download and use and contribute to.
So do you have actual, so we've mentioned a website people could look at. People can also add information that would be of use to you. They might say, oh, well, I happen to know of this, that, or the other thing, or not.
Yeah, the next phase of our process is to enable that. We've already implemented this, but we just need to kind of release it. A process for people to let us know, I think this is wrong in these ways. Here is some evidence, perhaps make a modification. But also for a community of scholars to actually create different digitizations and upload them and have a group of editors check which one is the most reliable digitization, so that this resource can continue to represent, the best of our knowledge of Roman roads.
Exactly. So tell me exactly what you have been doing. You individually, what's your role in this?
Well, I'm the director of the project, so
Oh, so you're the director. Oh, so I found the right person then.
if you want to talk about management, I'm the right person. No,
Is this your brainchild that you said, oh, I love this. This is my area. And I'm going to get this network of people and make this thing happen.
Yeah, me and Professor Pau de Soto. So the project, it's about 20 people, but we were really a collaboration between two major projects. My project based in Denmark, which kind of took care of the East and all of Africa, and a project called Viatere by Pau de Soto, who's based in Barcelona in Spain, and he did all of the West. And so together, about 5 years ago, we were talking about his previous project in which he collected all of those roads in Spain. And the contrast with what we previously knew about the roads in Spain was just insane. It's like he increased it by 300%, the known location of roads. And I thought,
just by his own research locally where he was.
Just by finding the publications that describe where roads are, just by mapping them, just by
in Spain. He would go and collect. And of course, I guess now when more materials are digitized, it becomes easier.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you were talking about earlier, you were asking, why can you do a project like this right now in the present day? One revolution that has taken place in archaeology, it's not just about ancient ruins anymore or statues. We have lots of this information digitized now for the very first time. What was crucial for us is having access to about 8,000 Roman milestones. So those are those like way markers that you still have along major highways saying you are now on this road along this mile, for example. Roads went past those, so it's important to know where they are. We have access to them digitally now, and that can very much inform us to essentially play like a continental scale game of connecting the dots between those milestones. But also just having access to satellite photography easily from your own laptop,
right.
Historical satellite photography, even historical topographic maps from the pre-World War II areas in the Middle East, for example, which were very important to show like what were those connections between places about 100 years ago. We have access to these things digitally now. So a project like this, it can be performed in 5 years. That wouldn't have been possible 25 years ago.
Yeah. So you're with your 20 colleagues, you're putting this all together and creating a map of the Roman road system.
Yeah.
And will this be in a book, or what's the end game, the goal?
The end game, I mean, we just need to keep on improving.
There never is an end.
Yeah, we just need to keep on improving this resource. I mean, like, we're talking about an area the size of the European Union. There's constant archaeological activity, constant new discoveries, and I just want this place to be the place where everyone in the world can see where those Roman roads are. But we're not just interested in the location of the roads. We are interested as archaeologists in people who lived and died 2,000 years ago. And we use the roads as kind of a way of understanding, so how are different places connected? How did people move from the places where they work, perhaps the field, to a local villa or to a local town? How were products transported over land from a maritime port to the places where the products were consumed? Or how were things structured like ancient pandemics? Infectious disease is carried by humans. Those humans have the opportunity of getting in touch with other humans and transmitting infectious disease because the roads exist. Or even like the fall of the Western Roman Empire, and a contributing factor there was the migration on a massive scale of Germanic peoples. Lots of that happened over land, and obviously they followed the roads. What were like the main flows of those migrations? What were the places that were particularly vulnerable to those massive movements of people? We need to know where the roads are in order to understand lots of important topics that happened 2,000 years ago. So the roads are not only the end game, it's understanding how people lived and died 2,000 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. So out where I live, so we're kind of, well, on the other side of Rome, but I live North Rome, and right near the Villa di Livia, which is where Augustus had his summer villa with Livia. And then all of the Roman emperors, I mean, they made their ways to, and I suppose a lot of it was done on a maritime basis, but Tiberius down in Sperlonga, I don't know if you've ever been there, but so I suppose there must be some kind of a road system that would get them down to Sperlonga and all throughout Italy. So you have access to that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, how did people get to those kind of places? We can identify that now, or we can add that information if the information is missing. I also kind of want to touch on, the importance of roads for food, because that's an important topic of your podcast.
Yeah, that's my topic.
So one of the things that really fascinates me about the Roman Empire is that it could sustain massive cities. Places like Alexandria and Antioch, but especially the capital of Rome, which had a population of about 1 million people 2,000 years ago. I mean, that's a number that wasn't equaled until London in the 19th century. So Rome couldn't keep its population of 1 million people alive anymore with just the foodstuffs that were produced in its own hinterland. So once it was able to do so, it incentivized the production on a massive scale of foodstuffs in different places. Olive oil in Spain, wine in North Africa, and especially grain from Egypt. And so it's the transport system of the Romans that was integrated on a continental scale that enabled a population of 1 million people to stay alive. Just to tell you the story of the olive oil of the south of Spain, for example, there's a really, really tangible evidence of this process and the scale, just 1 or 2 kilometers from where we are in the Testaccio neighborhood. This is where the river port of Rome was, so where the goods from abroad arrived and were taken out of their containers. Those containers were ceramic containers, amphorae, and they were filled with olive oil from Spain. And it happened at such a scale that there were too many amphorae. They couldn't reuse them. There was no other oil from Italy that they had to put into those amphorae and send to Spain. No, that was the entire point. So what they did was they emptied the amphorae of the olive oil, they cleaned the amphorae, broke them up, and stacked them very neatly. This happened for 200 years at such a scale that it created an artificial mountain called Monte Testaccio. So it's just, you can still see it.
I actually didn't know that.
Well, it's a new mountain or new hill of Rome that the Romans created themselves.
Yeah.
And it is created because of food, because of the need to keep this population alive for hundreds of years, importing especially olive oil from the south of Spain and wine from North Africa. But so, the roads are important there. It's not just like the sea lanes or the rivers, but once they arrived on a river port, they need to then be transported over the roads to the places where the people lived, to keep those people alive, to supply to the consumers. So for that, final mile delivery, it's really important to know where the roads are.
Yeah. And I've found, and I've even been saying this to my grandchildren recently, that it's geography that determines history. Because if you don't have a certain road system or you don't have a river system, it's that really makes things happen. I mean, you think of Venice and the port of Venice and everything that was coming in and out of there. I mean, spices and amazing things that Italians don't even use anymore. It's so much determined by geography.
Yeah. Absolutely. And, the roads are the infrastructure that has to respect geography on the one hand, and also kind of like reduce the friction of geography as much as possible. What I find it really interesting is, to kind of think about this myth of all roads lead to Rome. I mean, this is not something the Romans said. This is a medieval saying that just kind of stuck.
I like it.
But yeah, in part, it's because Rome is so central spatially within this continental scale empire. We know it's in the middle of the Mediterranean, but when we think about the roads, though, the Mediterranean is a real barrier for overland transport. What concerns the roads, Rome is very much an outlier. Like significantly fewer roads go to Rome than they go to Milan, for example. Which in the Po Valley, if you want to follow roads from outside of the Italian peninsula into Italy, then that's very much a detour to all of the traffic. So we can kind of explore like exactly how central was Rome actually. As I said before, the roads.
So if we think about a circle, which is this road system, where is Rome in that circle?
Yeah, that's a very good way of visualizing it, right? Like the Mediterranean, like the Roman Empire is like a circle around the Mediterranean. And the main structure of the roads also follows this circular pattern with a couple of appendages. One appendage is the River Nile and the roads along that, for example. But another one is the Italian peninsula, which kind of dangles in the middle of that circle. And so Rome is central within the Italian peninsula. But the location of Rome really needs to be understood with reference to shipping, long distance shipping. It was on a navigable river, a little bit inland, with major ports of Portus and Ostia, which allows you to be connected not just to Spain in the west, but also to Antioch, Syria, and Alexandria in Egypt in the east, for example. And Rome is centrally located for that long distance transport over sea, not necessarily over roads.
Okay. Now, you mentioned that you're going to be, because you're in Rome this week visiting and pursuing your research, that you're going to visit Ostia. Tell me what you're going to be doing there.
Yeah, Ostia is one of those pearls of Roman archaeology. It is like Pompeii with less people. So you can see the ancient street plan of an ancient city. You can see entire quarters. We know quite a lot about, what kind of professional activities were taking place in different houses, thanks to inscriptions. So like kind of carvings into rock. Revealing Latin writing, telling us like these types of merchants, they had their base here, or the merchants representing goods from this area where they were based here. So for me, it's like Disneyland, it's the best place to go to try to think like, so how did all of this stuff function? And Ostia is not just any place. To some extent, you could say Pompeii is just any place. That's just like, a Republican, early imperial Roman town. And that's what we learn about it. Ostia, it's the harbor of the city of Rome, the most important city for a very long time. All of the goods from abroad, to keep those people of Rome alive, they passed through Ostia. And so it's a fascinating place to think about, what was their harbor infrastructure? What was the capacity of getting those goods and transshipping them over the river Tiber to Rome? What's also really fascinating is the relationship between Ostia and the second port. I mean, Rome was so important and so big, one harbor was not good enough. They needed to create, in the early imperial times, a second harbor, which is an incredible feat of engineering. It has, under the Emperor Trajan, they built a massive octagonal basin with lots of warehouses around it, where dozens of ships could be anchored, and all of those amphorae, all of those goods, the grain from Egypt could have been taken out there. And then there was this entire system of canals and riverboats connecting the port of Portus and Ostia with the river Tiber, where the boats would go up to the river port here in Rome, not far from where we're sitting now in the Testaccio neighborhood, where the goods would then finally be deposited and consumed by the people of Rome. There was so much traffic on the River Tiber that in places they even had like a dual carriageway situation. The boats go in this direction if they go upstream, and in the other direction if they go downstream, even with signals, indicating whether a boat could pass or not. I find that fascinating. And places like this, the Testaccio neighborhood in Rome and Ostia, they are very accessible places to kind of untangle that mystery.
Yeah, and where we're sitting now, and I'll just kind of turn this around so you can have a better look at, well, we're just surrounded by ruins, but there's almost no one here. I mean, there are some places in Rome that are so overcrowded that they just don't hold a candle to where we're sitting, quite frankly, historically speaking. It's gorgeous here. And Ostia is an amazing place. In fact, my web person and dear friend lives in Ostia, very, very wisely. So, yeah, and returning to Pompeii, the thing about Pompeii is not its importance or its location, it's that it was like playing that game that kids play, freeze. So it was frozen, and you just find everything. You find, unfortunately, people's bodies, their grain, their food. It was really this moment 2,000 years ago, whatever it was, frozen in time. And some of this is here in Rome. It's a bit falling apart, but in a very beautiful way, I would say. And as you say, much more important.
Yeah. I mean, Rome is like the largest archaeological site in the world. I think it's very hard to argue that any part of Rome is not of interest to archaeologists. But it's also a living town. It's not that when the western part of the Roman Empire fell, this town all of a sudden was completely deserted and nothing happened here anymore. Rome is like an onion with enormous amounts of layers that just built on top of each other and on top of each other. And as an archaeologist, it's just fascinating to walk around in a town like this, or with these ancient baths, and not just see, what were they at the peak of the Roman Empire, but also how did they live afterwards? Like, how were they reused by the people who lived there afterwards? How was this treated? Like a massive quarry for building materials to build medieval buildings in Rome, for example. And then how was that heritage treated throughout the 19th and early 20th century? With an eye on restoring the greatness of the Roman Empire and removing, what's so interesting about its later development and the medieval times. It's a fascinating picture, and it's a complete opposite to Pompeii. Like you said, Pompeii is a moment frozen in time.
Yeah.
Rome is like an onion that keeps on living.
And it's much easier to walk around here than Pompeii.
Absolutely.
This has been Flavor of Italy. Find us on www.flavorofitaly.com and on Substack, YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook, always as Flavor of Italy.